This is 7 Sydney Afternoon News with Anne Sanders.
First at 4, good afternoon. Australia's evolving coronavirus health crisis has claimed more lives. The national death toll this afternoon is now 12, with Victoria recording its first 3 casualties. There are now 2,793 cases recorded. The government has been forced to backflip on a number of restrictions, including hairdressers, funerals and elective surgery. We'll have more on those details shortly from Canberra. But first, we cross live to Chief Reporter Chris Reason. Chris, good afternoon to you. New South Wales has seen another spike in cases and more children are included in the list.
Yes, indeed. Good afternoon to you. And 1,219 is the current total. It was up by 190 overnight. That's actually a decrease in our daily infection rates in this state, if you like, which is obviously welcome, encouraging news. And experts say that's probably a result of the effect of the shutdown of our borders now starting to trickle through on those total tolls. That's the good news. The bad news is, as you say, 2 more children added to the list. Under 10, it takes a total to 4. One of those was a 1-year-old, the other a 2-year-old. And we're told that that 1-year-old is struggling, according to sources speaking to 7 News. Now, this, as Gladys Berejiklian, the Premier, has again repeated warnings that the lockdown situation for our state and for certain areas of our states is very much on the cards. She keeps dropping these hints in her daily press briefings. There was another one today. She says she's waiting for a threshold to be hit before she goes down that path. What that threshold is, we don't know. But let's have a listen to the New South Wales Premier at that briefing this morning.
We need to make sure that we assess carefully in the very near future what impact the shutdowns to date have had. If they haven't had enough impact, we will have to go further. If there's a significant shift or a sufficient shift in the number of people acquiring it from community to community transmission, then you know that you need to take further action.
Also overnight, Lam, we saw a very significant shift in the policy when dealing with incoming passengers, the cruise ship issue. 292 passengers that flew in from Honolulu, where they were picked up from the Norwegian Jewel, were escorted from the Sydney International Airport into the centre of the city and put into a hotel for 14 days of quarantine, the Swiss Hotel, under guard, I might add, from the ABF, the Australian Border Force, and New South Wales Police. Now, a very significant shift in policy, as I say, as the governments, the state and federal, are still continuing this bitter blame game and the pointing of fingers over who allowed the passengers off the Ruby Princess to come into the community. 2,700 of them so far, more than 130 positive cases. That's 10% of the New South Wales statistics so far. Gladys Berejiklian, though, changing local policy here, saying there are currently 12 ships off the coast at the moment, all of them looking to come in, thousands of passengers on board. She's saying now they will not let any of them come into dock until they've worked out a new and stricter, tougher policy with the federal government. Anne.
Thanks very much for that update, Chris. Chris Reason reporting. The WA Premier has called on the Australian Navy to move a passenger ship from Australian waters. The Artania cruise ship is off the WA coast with 7 people on board who have tested positive to coronavirus. Authorities are in negotiations over 5 cruise liners in the area. There are plans to move Australians on board to the local Rottnest Island for quarantine.
No one will come ashore unless they are going to go into isolation, and no one else will come ashore unless it's for specific medical reasons.
800 Australians are on board the ships. The National Cabinet has had to unwind some social distancing measures designed to prevent the spread of coronavirus, admitting in one case their demand was simply impractical. Political correspondent Tim Lester joins us from Canberra. Good afternoon, Tim. Which measures are at issue?
Well, Anne, there has been tweaks to the rules around funerals and also to the elective surgery plans, but much of the fuss is centred on National Cabinet's decision with regard to hair salons.
The hairdressing original limitation, as you know, was 30 minutes with the hairdresser. I think it was very apparent that was an impractical limitation.
National Cabinet has now scrapped the haircut time limit. Other limits on hairdressers remain, including the widely used 4 square metres for each person in the shop.
More importantly, though, if you need a haircut and you've got any symptoms of a cold at all, you must not go.
Also softened, a 10-person limit for funerals. States can now raise the maximum in special cases. As well, private hospitals have been given a week extra to complete semi-urgent surgeries before an expected increase of coronavirus cases. This as the government claims we're leading the world in testing for the virus.
We are the highest per capita testing country in the world now. We've overtaken South Korea.
Tim, the medical experts claim our testing is now vastly different to the United States.
Indeed, Anne. In fact, the Health Department here claims an Australian citizen is 25 times as likely as a US citizen to be tested for coronavirus. Here, 1.5% of those who are tested are found to have the virus. In the US, it's 53%. The department also says rapid tests have arrived in the country. They should make possible testing at home, though they're yet to be properly checked.
But it's very important that we have tests that work and are reliable, and they are the ones that people should be having, and they will have them if they go through the system that has been set up.
Professor Kelly also says that his officials are scouring the world for ventilators, Anne, as they prepare for a rush of intensive care cases.
Tim Lester in Canberra. Thank you, Tim. Flight Centre says it's still trying to bring Australians stuck overseas back home, despite standing down almost 4,000 local staff. 6,000 of the company's employees worldwide have been left jobless.
We're working very hard to help customers who are still in a bit of a bind, and that won't change.
Flight Centre says staff will return when demand rebounds. In the UK, Clarence House has announced that Prince Charles is in self-isolation after testing positive for coronavirus. Thoughts immediately turn to the health of the Queen, as those who came into close contact with the Prince of Wales are tracked down. Sarah Greenodge reports from London.
Well, the future king is said to be in good spirits and in otherwise good health despite testing positive to coronavirus. He started displaying mild symptoms over the weekend. He was tested on Monday and the results came back as positive. He is now self-isolating at his estate in Scotland, as is Camilla, despite her results coming back as negative. Now, Clarence House has said in a statement that it is not possible to ascertain from whom the Prince caught the virus, owing to the high number of engagements he carried out in his public role during recent weeks. Admittedly, Prince Charles, 71 years of age, had been doing his very best not to shake people's hands. He was namasteing everyone he met, and this was at a stage when social distancing wasn't mandatory here in the UK. On the 10th of March, he attended a summit with Prince Albert of Monaco. He has also subsequently tested positive to coronavirus, so a possible link there. 2 days later, on the 12th of March, the Prince of Wales was the guest of honour at an Australian bushfire fundraising event at Mansion House here in London. He was invited by the Australian High Commissioner to the UK, George Brandis. Australia House says Mr Brandis, like all staff there, are following the guidance of the UK government. He has no symptoms and all of us wish His Royal Highness a speedy recovery. Naturally, everyone is asking, when did Prince Charles last see the Queen? Well, that was on the morning of the 12th of March. Doctors say because his symptoms only appeared over the weekend, the earliest he could have been contagious was the 13th of March, just 24 hours after he was with his 93-year-old mother. Both she and Prince Philip remain in a lockdown of sorts at Windsor Castle. The PM's office and the royal family have both tweeted photos of Boris Johnson and the Queen in their weekly audience, the Queen from Windsor, perhaps a bid by the palace to prove that she is doing just fine.
The death toll in Spain has surpassed that of China, with more than 3,500 people dying from coronavirus. Overall, nearly 50,000 people have been infected, putting a major strain on Spain's health system and ageing population. A state of emergency has been extended for 2 weeks. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has told the country to act like you have coronavirus as it enters a stage 4 lockdown. Non-essential businesses are closed, schools shut, and exercise will be limited for the next 4 weeks to combat the outbreak. Police and the military have been deployed to the community. Supermarket giant Coles opened its doors early this morning to allow our healthcare workers to shop and avoid the panic buying stampede. Andrew Denny joins me. Andrew, how did the dedicated hour go?
Well, it was a very different scene at Coles supermarkets across the country this morning as essential service workers were given an hour alone in store to gather their own essentials. At 7 a.m, the doors opened for doctors, nurses, paramedics, police and firefighters, those who are still required to work during this health crisis. But shift work means many of them can't get to the shops before they're stripped bare. It's a similar initiative to the ones offered to the elderly in an attempt to allow fairer access to stock for everyone.
I'm quite emotional this morning because it's been weeks since I've actually done a proper shop.
We can get what we need and then go to work.
Working in the health industry is a bit tough at the moment. This really is a good way for us just to catch up with life as well.
But as this unprecedented level of buying continues, more stores have brought in limits for customers, restrictions in place on the purchase of alcohol, while at Bunnings, generators, gas bottles, face masks and fuel are limited to just one per person. Now, the supermarkets say they will need to continue running dedicated shopping times of the like we saw this morning until panic buying stops and stocks return to normal.
Thanks, Andrew. Our meteorologist David Brown joins us now. Afternoon, Brownie. Wind was a little cool today.
Yeah, certainly. Well, it is still rather cool, Anne, and good afternoon to you. But look, some good news, I guess. The showers have started to ease. In fact, most of the activity has been confined to the northern half of Sydney. In fact, as we go to the radar, we're looking at the latest scan. A lot of rain to the north of us over the Central Coast and parts of the Hunter. Isolated showers to the northern half of Sydney. And we've got one just tracking over the Royal National Park at the moment. But on a bigger scale, we have showers and thunderstorms, most of the storms moderate intensity, extending all the way through to the Queensland border. The forecast for tonight and tomorrow highlights further areas of instability, just mainly scattered showers. The bulk of it to the north, as you can see, just the odd one along parts of the coast. But look, I think it's fair to say most of the state is facing a dry Friday. And the same can be said for our backyard. This is the forecast model for your Friday. Cool, partly cloudy conditions and dry for most of it. Right now, it feels rather fresh in that southerly wind. Check out this. It feels like 15 degrees in Bondi right now. Weekend weather in detail, top of the hour. Anne?
Thanks, Brownie. And still to come in Sydney's afternoon news on 7, trillions of dollars, the wartime investment to revive the world's biggest economy. No way home, dozens of cruise ships carrying thousands of Australian passengers. And dusting off the relics of Saint Corona, the patron of epidemics. That's next. You're watching 7's 4 p.m. Sydney News, and this is the view from Katoomba in the Blue Mountains, where right now it's a fresh 12 degrees. The Australian man behind the Christchurch mosque attack has changed his plea to guilty. Brenton Tarrant admitted to 51 counts of murder, 40 counts of attempted murder and a terrorism charge in the Christchurch High Court. The names of the victims were read out in court. A trial has been set down for June. The US Senate has passed the country's record $2 trillion coronavirus stimulus package. It's financial relief, the likes of which the country has never seen. But as US Bureau Chief Ashley Mullaney explains, not all leaders are happy.
The deal focuses on putting cash in the hands of struggling Americans in what is the biggest stimulus package in US history. It includes $1,200 checks for Americans who earn $75,000 or less, loans for small businesses and multi-billion-dollar packages for corporate America, including the struggling airline industry. The president's businesses, also hurting with the national shutdowns, would not qualify for assistance. The $2 trillion package to revive the world's biggest economy has been described as a wartime investment, going well beyond the package approved in 2009 during the last recession. Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York critical of the package. He says it doesn't go far enough to help his city, now the epicentre of the outbreak, with makeshift morgues now being established outside hospitals. More than 60,000 Americans have now contracted the coronavirus, more than 800 dead. Despite that, the president's insisting he wants his country back to work as soon as Easter.
And I don't think it's going to end up being such a rough patch. I think it's going to, when we open, especially if we can open it, the sooner the better, it's going to open up like a rocket ship. I think it's going to go very good and very quickly. Americans have been told help is on the way, but timing is crucial. Economists warning if the money doesn't come soon, America may need more than the $2 trillion on the table now.
China has lifted a travel ban for residents of Hubei province, with the exception of the coronavirus epicentre in Wuhan. Approved locals have been sent an online barcode, which they must present at the border if they leave the province. The only new cases being recorded in China have been imported. Cleaners are carrying out a mass disinfection. A German church has dusted off the relics of Saint Corona, believed to be the patron saint of epidemic resistance, to put them on show to the public. There were plans to display the gold antiquities of the teenage saint this year, even before the coronavirus pandemic. They've been kept underground for more than 1,000 years. Terrified Australian tourists across the planet are stuck on cruise ships, prevented from docking in ports, shut down by coronavirus restrictions. To reporter Taylor Auerbach, Taylor, how many Australians remain trapped?
Well, the latest advice from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade is that there remain around 3,000 Australians stranded on about 25 cruise ships scattered across the world. The novelty is well and truly wearing off for those Australians, and stress and panic is beginning to take hold as they run out of ports to dock in and, of course, run out of time, with airlines across the globe virtually grounding their fleets. One of those vessels is the Ocean Atlantic, which is a ship designed to explore the Antarctic waters, but it's currently stranded off the coast of Uruguay without adequate air conditioning, and for the 125 Australians stuck on board, cabin fever is beginning to set in.
Some Americans, Canadians, Israelis and British have left the ship. Not a single Australian has had the opportunity to leave.
Morale is dropping, and the uncertainty of it all is getting to people. And I don't really know how much longer everybody can handle it.
DFAT officials are aware of their situation and are trying to work out a way of getting them home. They tell us they are in direct contact with a host of cruise operators, but of course one of the main difficulties for DFAT and for the people on board is that a number of international borders are closing rapidly, as Australia's did this week. So this is a problem that's getting worse by the hour and with no clear end in sight.
Thanks, Taylor. Next in 7's afternoon news, hundreds of stores forced to close, the impact of coronavirus on the industry and its workers. Police power the alleged syndicate operating behind these doors. And in sport, the doomsday scenario that could spark a bit of pay war between the NRL and their players.
Tonight on 7 News with Mark Ferguson.
Australia's virus death toll hits 12, close to 4,000 jobs slashed at Flight Centre, and busting the virus myths, fact versus fiction.
Tonight on 7 News at 6.
11 people have been charged after drugs and cash were seized by organised crime squad detectives. Police charged 8 Vietnamese nationals after finding millions of dollars worth of cannabis in the city's southwest. All were refused bail. 3 other people were charged in northern New South Wales and Queensland during the operation. Tens of thousands of retail workers lost their jobs today, more victims of the coronavirus crisis. Leonie Ryan reports big-name stores are saying they can't survive the loss of trade or risk the health of staff and customers.
Good afternoon, and while dozens of retailers are shutting their doors as COVID-19 continues to bite. Premier Investments, which owns Just Jeans, Portman's, Peter Alexander and JJ's, will temporarily shut from 6 p.m. tonight. 9,000 workers globally are affected. The company said in a statement to investors, regrettably, this means all employees in Australia will be stood down except those needed for essential work, and arrangements have been put in place to ensure they can access entitlements such as annual and long service leave. The Accent Group has also announced the closure of all of its stores, which includes Athlete's Foot, Hype and Platypus, from 5 p.m. tomorrow for at least the next 4 weeks. 5,000 people will be jobless, but the company is assuring customers they can still shop online. This morning, the queues at Centrelink were a lot shorter. Earlier this week, they were hundreds of metres long. Just a few today, meaning many people are either jumping online or calling the Centrelink hotline.
It wasn't too bad. Waited about half an hour, 45 minutes, so it was pretty quick.
But with the announcement of more job losses, the lines at Centrelink are indeed expected to increase.
Time for sport now with Mel McLaughlin. Hello, Mel. The brutal reality of the coronavirus crisis has hit home for NRL players.
Hi, Anne. Yeah, it has in a big way. Players will be asked to take a pay cut of up to 87% if the 2020 season is cancelled due to the pandemic. It's a request that appears certain to create a huge divide between the NRL and the Players Association, who had promised to work together to reach a solution. The negotiations are going on against a backdrop of huge bloodletting in clubland. The Raiders today announced their Centre of Excellence will shut tomorrow and all staff will be placed on unpaid leave.
We've got young people here, young staff here that, are pregnant, just about to give birth. Some have bought houses, some not sure what their job prospects are.
And Rabbitohs football manager Shane Richardson has resigned with immediate effect to ease the financial burden on the club. Well, the AFL is also engaged in a bitter battle over player pay cuts. Chief Executive Gillon McLachlan says he'll take the same 80% wage reduction that he's asking of the players. But the Players' Union is only willing to give up 50%. With the shutdown in full effect, Giants young gun Bobby Hill has moved to Melbourne to train at the home of his cousin, St Kilda star Brad Hill.
He's got a lot more experience and more pre-seasons under his belt. It's also good to have a different environment to come train with him.
Clubs have instructed players they can only train with disinfected footballs. Racing New South Wales is breathing a huge sigh of relief with star jockeys Hugh Bowman and Tommy Berry returning negative tests for COVID-19. The pair shared a chartered flight last week with Melbourne rider Mark Zahra, who's awaiting the results of his own test after possible exposure on a commercial flight.
The worrying part is, I guess, that some people don't get any symptoms, but I haven't had any, and either had anyone in my family or anyone I was in contact with on the weekend.
Officials remain hopeful Stakes Day at Rose Hill will go ahead on Saturday under the strict new biosecurity measures implemented earlier this week. Australian coach Justin Langer is urging his players to find a silver lining in the sporting shutdown. It has been a busy schedule for the squad, who have been playing in game mode since last year's tour of the UK. And Langer admits his players were physically and mentally exhausted.
It gives them a really good opportunity to recharge, and we're obviously looking at scenarios moving forward to make sure we'll be ready for whatever comes up.
Players have 6 weeks off before a tour of Bangladesh in June, which has not yet been postponed or called off. One of the world's leading anti-doping crusaders concedes the COVID-19 pandemic is the perfect cover for drug cheats. Travis Tigart, the man who brought down Lance Armstrong, says the longer drug testing is reduced or stopped in some countries, the harder it'll be to weed out cheats before next year's Tokyo Olympics.
We're going to have to do a lot to ensure, once things do reopen, that if anyone did try to take advantage of this sort of reduced time period, that they can't get away with it.
There are now questions over whether convicted dopers whose bans expire before the rescheduled games should be allowed to compete. An A-League player who broke coronavirus quarantine to take a drunken joyride in a golf cart on the Northern Beaches has issued a tearful apology. Tim Payne left Wellington's base at the Academy of Sport in Narrabeen and was found by police driving the buggy on Wakehurst Parkway early on Tuesday morning. The defender was charged with mid-range drink driving.
I take full responsibility for my actions and for what unfolded on that night. I'm incredibly embarrassed and so sorry that I've let so many people down.
Teammate Oliver Sale was a passenger. The Phoenix and FFA are investigating, and the FFA and the A-League are set for some pain of their own as we see these cuts continue, Anne.
All right. Thank you very much, Mel. This afternoon's top stories are next as a Sydney CBD hotel becomes a quarantine centre. Find out where returning passengers are being held. Government backflip, how hairdressers have reacted to another change in rules. And Market Watch, the winners and losers, as the ASX looks to continue its revival. That's next.
This is 7 Sydney Afternoon News with Ann Sanders.
A 1-year-old girl is among the state's youngest coronavirus cases, with 1,219 confirmed cases in New South Wales. Officials say 170,000 tests have been taken in Australia.
We're trying to achieve the flattening of the curve, which means having less cases if possible, but certainly having that rise in cases to decrease.
Extra ventilators, protective equipment and intensive care beds will be brought in. Police are guarding a Sydney hotel where quarantine passengers from the Norwegian Jewel cruise ship are staying. Evan Batten joins us now. Evan, what more can you tell us?
Well, Anne, there were 292 passengers on the Norwegian Jewel that took off from Sydney here behind me about a month ago on what was supposed to be a 23-day tour of French Polynesia. But before too long, the cruise ship was being turned away from country after country. First of all, it was Fiji and then New Zealand. The cruise operators were only able to strike a deal with authorities in Honolulu if they agreed to charter buses to take the passengers straight from the dock to the airport, where chartered flights were arranged to take passengers home from there. Now, 7 News understands there were in fact 3 flights, one to Europe, one to America and the one to Australia that arrived last night. There were 5 passengers taken off that flight who had to be taken to hospital with symptoms of coronavirus. The rest, and as you say, were taken to the Swiss Hotel on Market Street, right in the middle of the CBD, and that building is now under police guard. It's both a hotel and an apartment complex. Residents in that building are furious. They weren't told about any of this, and they're now sharing lifts with the people who got off that flight, worried that they may or may not have coronavirus. They just don't know. And now there are serious questions being asked of the cruise operators why they let the passengers off the cruise ship in the first place.
I do not want any action taken further in relation to releasing any passengers off any boat in Sydney until we get a tick-off from all authorities on the new protocols moving forward.
And Evan, there are more cases from other cruise ships in Sydney, including the Ruby Princess.
And absolutely, the fallout just continues from the way the coronavirus has been able to spread around cruise ships. Yes, the Ruby Princess, as you say, an extra 16 cases have been reported in New South Wales alone. The Ovation of the Seas, yesterday we understood there were 13 cases confirmed of COVID-19. That is now at 31. Anne?
Evan Batten reporting from Sydney. Thank you very much, Evan. 3 men, all aged in their 70s, have become the first Victorians to die from coronavirus, bringing the national death toll to 12. Victorian police have already begun identifying people who are ignoring self-isolation laws during inspections.
We've been getting a lot of calls to the police assistance line in relation to people wanting to report both people who they believe are not self-isolating, but also businesses they think are open when they shouldn't be.
Health authorities haven't revealed whether the latest casualties were suffering pre-existing conditions. The Prime Minister has backflipped on his rule of 30-minute appointments at the hairdresser. Natasha Squarey joins me now. Natasha, the owner of one chain says they should be closing altogether.
Good afternoon, Anne. Well, before the coronavirus pandemic, hairdressing chain Just Cuts had 100,000 clients a week. But in this current climate, business is tough, and those figures have now halved. The man who started the company is pleading the government to shut all 13,000 salons across the country, saying both his staff and clients are at great risk.
We need it to shut down officially so our stylists can get help with remuneration later on.
Adding to this, a lot of confusion. Yesterday, the federal government said hair appointments had to be limited to 30 minutes. But this morning conceded those new restrictions weren't practical. People can now get their hair done as usual as long as the 4 square metre rule is in place. There's also been a change to the rules surrounding funerals. Right now, 10 people are allowed at a service, but families can apply to have extra mourners attend on compassionate grounds.
Families need to consult with their funeral director, and an application needs to be made to the State Health Minister.
So, Anne, an anxious wait for tens of thousands of more workers who are uncertain what happens next.
Thanks, Natasha. It's been a week of cautious recovery on the Australian Stock Exchange as investors come to grips with a very different economic landscape. I'm joined now by Network Finance Editor Gemma Acton. Hello, Gemma. What do we see on the local market today?
Well, and we saw the ASX 200 close above 5,000 points for the first time in more than a week. Shares traded strongly all through the day, but then got an extra bump at the end of the day when we got confirmation that the enormous US stimulus package had passed there. But Anne, this strong showing today on the share market really stands in sharp contrast to some of the other news we've heard out of businesses. The Australian Bureau of Statistics today said that they took a survey in the middle of the month asking businesses who will be affected by coronavirus. 86% of businesses said they would be, and we remember that was a while ago, so certainly that figure will be higher by now. Unsurprisingly, accommodation and food services were among those that were saying they'll be hit the hardest.
All right, another day of mass closures and job losses in the retail industry. How did investors respond?
And it was a mixed bag. Premier Investments, which operates Smiggle and Just Jeans among other brands, the shares initially plunged after it said it would stand down 9,000 workers and close all of its stores for the time being. They recovered a bit of ground as the day went on. Accent Group, which operates Athlete's Foot and Hype among other brands, actually saw their shares rise by around 2.5%. And that was after they said that they would shut 500 stores and stand down 5,000 workers. And Flight Centre also said they're standing down 6,000 workers, but their shares have been suspended since Monday, so we do not know what investors thought of that.
All right, Gemma, thank you very much for updating us. Elective surgeries around the country will be put on hold as hospitals prepare for the rush of coronavirus patients. Our reporter Marley Hogan has more on this. Marley, we're learning that transplant surgeries will also be affected.
Yeah, and thousands of people on the waiting list for a kidney transplant have been told the wait is now a lot longer. Doctors have decided to suspend the majority of kidney transplant operations because it's feared recovering patients would suffer life-threatening infections if they contracted the coronavirus. Doctors explained that kidney transplants are the first to be suspended because the majority of patients can survive on dialysis. For now, even though there is a risk, they are still performing life-saving transplant surgeries for heart, lung and liver patients. But a major downfall to all of this is that as hospitals prepare for the peak of coronavirus patients to take up rooms in the intensive care units, it's expected the number of organs that will be donated will drastically fall.
But if we look at the examples from overseas, there are incredible pressures on intensive care units. And most of our colleagues internationally, particularly from Europe, are saying that there is just very little scope to support donors in that intensive care environment. And the last thing we want to do is to transplant an organ that is carrying the virus.
It comes as the Prime Minister relaxes the rules for private hospitals. They can still perform semi-urgent elective surgeries until the start of April. Public hospitals stopped all non-urgent surgeries last night. It's hoped that will free up beds, equipment and specialists to help treat patients with coronavirus.
There's been a spike in toy sales as thousands of parents and children find themselves housebound during the coronavirus pandemic. With outdoor activities limited, jigsaw puzzles are making a mighty comeback. Tom Chadwick explains.
As thousands of Australians continue to deal with long periods of isolation, it is puzzles and board games that seems to be getting people through. As businesses close and thousands lose their jobs, it's the opposite here in toy stores. They're doing a roaring trade.
Oh, amazing. It's like Christmas over again, except it's probably even busier than Christmas.
Jigsaw puzzles in particular are flying out the door. They were the popular item during the Great Depression, and now the coronavirus crisis has forced them back into the market with a bang.
We've turned over 340 puzzles in 6 days. We probably wouldn't sell as many puzzles at Christmas.
Everyone's going to be home, so let's get some family time and get some puzzles happening.
I was more looking for 500-piece ones because I've got a 1,000-piece at home and I can't finish it.
Why is puzzles in particular tickle your fancy?
Because they're time-consuming.
And they don't just pass the time either. Experts claim the old-fashioned jigsaw puzzle has significant mental health benefits.
It takes our mind off some of the things that we're unable to control. So instead of sitting there and thinking about the things that are beyond our control that could otherwise distress us, it is a way to essentially help us be more present and more engaged.
So with isolation and social distancing expected to continue for several months, I recommend loading up.
Good idea. Just ahead in 7's afternoon news, help from above, the Australian drone to detect coronavirus. Feel good news, heroes at home helping out in isolated times. And it's 21 degrees in Randwick. Brownie will have our forecast shortly. A fast food restaurant in Vietnam has created a unique burger designed to look like the coronavirus. The Corona Burger bun has the distinctive spikes of the virus and is made with spinach juice to give a green tinge. You'd think people would flee, but it's been ordered 100 times, according to the owner, who said his son came up with the idea. Locating coronavirus hotspots in the community has been a difficult task for authorities, but Australian and Canadian researchers have found a way to make things easier. Alice Baker explains.
Researchers at the University of South Australia are working to develop special drones that can monitor and detect people with COVID-19 symptoms. They've teamed up with Canadian drone company Dragonfly to get this technology up and running as quickly as they can. The devices will have special sensors that can seek out coronavirus symptoms in places where groups of people may gather.
Heart rate, breathing rate, temperature. We'd also be looking for gestures that are associated with coughing and other sort of respiratory distress.
The drones can measure these signs from up to 10 metres away. If the technology is placed in static cameras, then it can be done from even further, up to 50 metres away. The idea is to map out where the virus is and where it isn't, to better inform decision making when it comes to dealing with the outbreak.
The trick has been to work out where it is and try to put a rope around it, and that seems to have been very hard for everybody.
More work needs to be done, so it could be 6 months before these drones can be used by governments and medical authorities.
Let's cross to Mike Ferguson in the newsroom. Hello, Mike. What's coming up at 6 p.m?
Yeah, good afternoon. And again, we're looking at all the major pandemic developments. Australia's death toll has spiked in the past 24 hours, with 4 elderly men losing their battle, including another Ruby Princess passenger. Tonight, there's more than 1,200 confirmed cases across New South Wales, with 2 more children testing positive. Also, thousands more are joining the unemployment line, with Flight Centre and large retailers, including Just Jeans and Peter Alexander, slashing jobs. Hairdressers have been given a reprieve, with the PM reversing his limit on 30-minute appointments. The virus hits the royal family. Prince Charles in isolation after testing positive. Could he have placed the Queen in danger? When you can't go to the zoo comes to you. The new reality of learning in the shadow of corona. And busting the myths, should you be wearing a mask? We separate fact from more fiction. And more extensive coverage in Sydney 7 News tonight at 6 o'clock.
See you then, Fergo. Thank you. Bindi Irwin confirmed on Instagram she tied the knot yesterday with fiancé Chandler Powell. She posted this photo saying they were married at Australia Zoo in a small ceremony without guests due to restrictions imposed on social distancing. She revealed her mum helped her get ready, brother Robert walked her down the aisle, and they lit a candle in her dad Steve's memory. 4:49. Let's get a check on Sydney's traffic. A community has come together for a 9-year-old girl who had her birthday cancelled over social distancing rules. Other messages of support have also been given to children in hospital during this coronavirus outbreak. Jess Ridley explains.
Well, adults can appreciate why events like weddings and birthdays have to be postponed right now, much better than children. 9-year-old Anais DaCosta from Canberra had her birthday party cancelled yesterday, but her spirits were lifted by the community. Hundreds of cars passing by who honked their horns for her.
Happy birthday!
Like a lot of kids at the moment, she's just dealing with a lot of disappointment, and something like this is just really nice because it makes her feel a little bit happier.
I felt really happy and I never knew people could be that nice.
I heard you're turning 4 today. That's so cool. I just want to know that Batman believes in you.
She says you've been really, really strong and really, really brave.
These are some of the messages being sent to children in hospital, with visitors limited now.
We can't visit these kids, unfortunately, anymore until further notice. However, that doesn't mean we can't reach them in other ways.
And here's a lovely idea for children missing their grandparents. A mum in South Australia has made her 4-year-old daughter some grandparent dolls that she can hold tight. We'll have more on these stories tonight on 7 News at 6.
Another lovely story, Jess. Thank you. Next in 7's Afternoon News, David Brown will be here with your latest forecast. David's back with the very latest forecast. Afternoon again, Brownie. How's the weekend shaping up?
Well, believe it or not, Anne, as you can see, conditions are starting to improve across the city. We've had just the odd shower or two. Most of them have been mainly across northern parts of Sydney, but over the city at the moment, it's looking okay. Today's temperature, as we have a look at that now, the maximum 22.4 degrees. That happened, well, almost an hour ago. For the state, it's chilly in some parts. Check out Orange. It's only 13 degrees. Can you believe it? Yes, winter is knocking on the door. For Newcastle, City got 18 degrees. As we head north up towards the Queensland border, Byron Bay, it's unsettled, a shower or two, but a comfortable 25 degrees. You'll notice we've got scattered showers and thunderstorms mainly affecting northern and central pockets of our state at the moment. The bulk of this unsettled weather is expected to contract towards the Queensland border. That will happen during the early hours of tomorrow morning. We're left with this lingering, isolated, showery sort of pattern continuing, but I must say the showers few and far between, much like today. And of course, let's have a look at the forecast for the major centres tomorrow. Brisbane might see a shower or two, 27 degrees. Check out Melbourne. Yes, the southern capital's turning on a beautiful autumnal day. Early fog, then a warm sunny top of around 26 degrees. Warmer again in Perth, clear skies and 29. For our city, an early shower is likely, then a fine partly cloudy day, lengthy sunny breaks and a top there of 24 degrees. As for the next 7 days, good news for the weekend. Look, I think it'll be dry for most of it. As for Sunday, it's warming up just a little bit. That's the latest weather. More details, 6 o'clock, Anne.
All right, Brownie, thank you. A reminder, we'll continue to bring you comprehensive coverage of the coronavirus crisis with 7 News at 6 o'clock. Then Michael Usher will have the latest at 7. Mike Ferguson will return with a special 7 News bulletin at 9:30 tonight. And that's Sydney's 4 p.m. news for this Thursday. I'm Ann Sanders. Thanks for joining us. Stay with 7 Now for the Chase Australia. Have a good night. Bye for now.